Now, I'll be the first to admit I've had some crazy-ass theories when it came to Rewrite in Season 1, some of which were completely ridiculous when you see the full picture, but back when I made those theories, I didn't know the full picture. But I've also had theories that turned out to be really damn close to what actually was happening, and some I pretty much have hit the nail on the head. And this week's episode of Rewrite confirms pretty much a theory I had in Season 1, that I actually forgot I had a theory on. Now, it was back in the episode 6 to 8 review mark that this theory kind of came up. It might have also been when I was analyzing the opening, the first opening of Rewrite, I forget exactly, but based on what someone told me on Twitter, it was around the episode 6 or 8 mark, give or take. But I made a lot of, theories and speculations on what was happening to Kotaro, because we saw him back in the flashback when Kaguya originally killed him with her ribbon there when she was in the forest with him, and then you see Kotori, heal him or do something to him to stop whatever was happening, and a lot of times I made the prediction that he died and she revived him, and people are like, no, Brandon, you can't go on that path, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot that happened there, but ultimately I said, if you look at the opening with it, he wakes up in a hospital bed right after that, so something ultimately happened, but one thing I pointed out was he was in, this suit, and why would a kid at his age be in a suit? And also, he looked like he was the same age as he was in present day, while, everyone else looked like they were kids. So that was something I heavily speculated on in Season 1. So when this reveal comes out that, in every timeline that he was in, he always ended up in a coma for a decade, and he's actually basically 10 years older than everyone in this group, and he always was. And when I saw that, I was just like, well, for one, I actually forgot I speculated on that, but then he just kind of connected the pieces, and I was just really happy because I'm glad, something that I was very keen on in Season 1 turned out to have such a major importance. I just really, really enjoyed that actually came to fruition here. That made me super happy. But it's interesting that the reason why humanity ultimately ended up failing every single timeline is actually because Kotaro wasn't around for the appropriate amount of time. He got involved in the world ending too late in the game, so always the resources ended burning up. No matter what path it took, he always couldn't save Earth no matter what because he was always in that coma. So that's a key to preventing this from happening again, is he can't wake up 10 years after all the bullshit has started happening. He has to be there from the start. He has to go on a path to help humanity survive so the key doesn't have to rebuild the world, start everything from scratch, so Gaia and Guardian don't have to bash heads in, so the world doesn't get destroyed by them. So because of this, with this new world being formed, he'll actually be able to start from the start and have a chance at making a world work because he's not going to be in that coma that he always ended up being in. And he won't also have to be saved by Kotori, essentially, because, she was a druid and all that kind of stuff, so she could create beasts, so that's how she ultimately healed him. But obviously, when that happened, it must have threw him into a coma, and then because of that, also, she had to protect the key. It was a whole mix of things that happened there, but because we now have this Earth that doesn't have to put him in a coma, this should lead to a path, and now that we're getting into the Terra arc, we are now going to focus on that. And I have to say, this moon route was damn good, I have to say. This episode, it had issues, don't get me wrong. I don't think it had issues story-wise or character-wise, but animation-wise, it had a lot of issues. There was a lot of even close-up shots that didn't look that good. I'm not going to bitch about the CG. I've praised my love for the CG in the series because they use it on these creatures that feel unworldly and it adds to the immersion. However, what doesn't add to the immersion is the amount of just jarring shots on characters that should be a little more polished, but when they were actually fighting, I thought it did look okay. It didn't look amazing until near the end, I would say, when, everyone was kind of pretty much dead except two, which was Sakya as well as Kotaro fighting. I thought that looked rather good, but the rest of it did look pretty mediocre and bad at times. However, the CG is still not an issue. It adds to the immersion of these creatures looking like they don't belong in this world, and that to me is a good thing. It is used for a shortcut, but it does add to it in my opinion. But the overall quality of the episode, in terms of visual presentation, it was lackluster. I'm not going to beat around the bush there. However, even so, it still was such an entertaining and engaging episode. I really enjoyed watching everyone pretty much sacrifice themselves to protect Kaguri while she went into this egg as they find the appropriate path that they can take, but it's going to take a bit of time for her to be able to build this reality to create this Earth, so they have to pretty much die fighting. Something I like is you get to see a couple of the girls remembering their life with Kotaro when he ended up being with them. He was their partner, and you got that nice little flashback before they passed on, as each of them did have a life, but ultimately this Kotaro, the one that we're focusing on here, the one he actually loved was this Kaguri, this Moon Kaguri, which is another thing I was speculating on is this the same Kaguri or not that we were focusing on in Season 1? Turns out, no, this was a completely separate one. Essentially, this was Moon Kaguri. So that doesn't come as like a surprise, but it was very cool to see it come together and that get explained as well, that this Kaguri is a completely separate entity for the moon, and in my mind probably just confirms that other worlds has their own Kaguris. But something that was also really, really cool is that Sakia, when he comes into this world, as we knew he had rewrite, in Season 1 we see him turn into a giant beast that he turns into in this episode, but we see that at the end in Season 1 that he had the same rewrite. That's why he was able to train Kotaro, is because he also had rewrite. Just if you abuse rewrite too much, you essentially become a demon, which we also see Kotaro turn into when he just rewrites himself so much that when he's dying fighting, he is pretty much a beast. He isn't his own being anymore. So seeing him turn into that beast, it was not shocking. I did see some people online saying, oh, we finally got a confirmation that he also had rewrite. That was confirmed in Season 1. I don't even play the visual novel. That was confirmed in Season 1. I don't know why people are getting excited about that. But what was exciting was that the way Sakia got in there, as he's pretty much his predecessor to Kotaro, was he linked all of his timelines to this one spot, essentially sealing his fate. He can never leave there, but in doing so, it gives them enough time to protect the key so she can create the appropriate Earth, which I really, really like that attention to detail and how he got there, but also seeing Kotaro go out sacrificing himself in this kind of beast form as he just kept rewriting himself to the point that he could bear having pretty much his arm ripped off and be this beast so he could die fighting. And the final scene with Kaguri and Kotaro kind of floating away saying, are we on the moon? No, we were always on the moon. You created this Earth. And Kaguri is now essential. This Kaguri is trapped on this Earth. She can never kind of be with anyone. But she says like the memories that she has with everyone is enough that she'll be able to bear with the loneliness that she'll have. And I thought that moment was just so sweet and heartwarming. And really, you know, even Kotaro, I think the line is something along the lines of, if there's a heaven, if there's one person I would want to meet, it's her. Like, I really, really liked how they portrayed love this episode. I mean, people are going to have their favorite route, their favorite girl and kind of a thing, and he ended up with them in different timelines. But for the one we were focusing on, I loved how the loneliness brought them together and how they truly fell in love with each other, and now they have to be separated for all eternity. As though there's going to be a Kaguri on this new Earth, it's not the same one. I really like that. It's kind of sad. It's just kind of bittersweet and really good to me. Just overall, this episode as a whole, this isn't my favorite Moon episode. I think last week is still my favorite, but it's such a good end to this route. I'm sure there's going to be some people who are going to say that there was too much info packed in. We needed another episode to really give it the appropriate amount of episodes it needed for this route. But I thought overall, the pacing was good. Sure, it was a little fast-paced this episode, but never did I think I was getting too much of one thing or I felt less out in one area. I thought it was tying back into Season 1 nicely, showing us the things that wasn't 100% explained as of yet, but did explain it. It confirmed some theories I had, and just overall, I'm interested to see where Terra goes, because now Kotaro won't be in a coma, at least I assume, because that was what was holding all these other routes back. So now that he's not in a coma, he'll be able to start, and I'm interested how similar it's going to be to the original season. I expect there is going to be some similarities, but it is going to be vastly different. But I'm really excited to see, now that he's not going to be away for 10 years, how everything's going to play out. And I expect some crazy shit to happen in Terra. I'm really excited to see it. I mean, this episode is great. I'm really having a blast with this. But I mean, for anyone who watched this episode, what did you think of this episode? Visual novel players, anime onlys. I mean, what are you thinking of this? And just overall, how excited are you for next week to see Terra anime? Because I have to say, I'm really fucking excited. I mean, I've been excited every single week since this returned, but to see how everything came together and to see this new arc just ready to get going, I can't wait to see it. And I'm sure we're gonna get a new opening. I mean, that seems to be pretty much guaranteed because we are in a new route now. But I mean, overall, I had a blast with this. I mean, if there's anything I didn't talk about in this episode that you want me to mention, just leave me a comment and I'll do my best to respond as soon as possible. But for anyone who, who watched the episode, let me know your thoughts, your theories, your speculations, and how you're feeling about the adaptation as a whole. And before you leave, hit that like button if you did enjoy the video. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.